An Orthodox priest dropped a bombshell on his congregation in a homily you don't want to miss. Stick around to find out more.
You're watching Reason and Theology Live, a show dedicated to charitable discussions, debates, interviews, commentary, and analysis. And now, your host, Michael Lofton.
Welcome back to Reason and Theology, everyone. Your host, Michael. On a Monday, I want to read to you a homily of an Orthodox priest. This priest delivered this to his congregation on his last day celebrating liturgy with them as he resigned to become an Eastern Catholic priest. This was a very, very courageous move on part of the priest, very moving, very loving, and here's an act of true charity for one's congregation where he spoke a message to his congregation about the necessity of entering into Catholic communion, and frankly told his congregation a message that they did not want to hear, but he said it in love. And I want to read this homily to you. Now, he gave me permission to do so. I'm going to withhold his name, the congregation, his bishop, all of that, because there are unfortunately a lot of online Orthodox who will dox him, harass him, and his wife. And I want to spare him of that. However, I do want us all to benefit from the message that he gave to his congregation on why he felt it was necessary to resign from his position as a priest in Eastern Orthodoxy and to become an Eastern Catholic priest. I think that this was just, again, truly, truly phenomenal and is a message that we desperately need to hear today. Going to share my screen of the edited homily. As I said, I edited it because I want to avoid him being harassed. So let's go ahead and begin. Again, he's reading this to his congregation at the very end of the liturgy. All right. Dear parish family and beloved friends, Christ is risen. Indeed, he is risen. Today, I'm truly grateful for the incredible joy we get to share as a family, a parish family, while we all bask together in the light of our risen Lord. For me, this Holy Week in Pascha was the best I've ever had. Not just because, in contrast to last year, we actually got to have a Holy Week in Pascha, but because we also seemed to be really in it together as a parish family in ways I hadn't felt or noticed before. There was a kind of rhythm that developed among us as we worked together to pray the prayers, sing the hymns, clean and prepare the temple, and finally, as we all triumphantly chanted together the Paschal hymn, Christ is risen. It was as truly beautiful feast, it was a truly beautiful feast, and I am so glad that I and my family could share this experience with you all. I'm also grateful that today I can finally open up about a conversation that I've desired to share with you for a long time, but could not until now for various reasons that will become obvious as I proceed. For the last for the last nearly 6 years, it's been my weekly joy to serve at the altar at, and I redacted the location, so blank, to join in with your voices in singing the liturgy, to receive the holy mysteries in your midst, to rejoice and suffer with you, and to converse with you about the incredible faith that we share as Orthodox Christians. I can honestly say that I've learned so much from you all. Every time I teach a class at the parish, I come home having learned something myself and grateful for having been challenged and forced to think more deeply about what our faith means and how it should shape our daily lives. Through this process, as you've become so much more to me than just parishioners, you've become friends, family, and co travelers on the most important journey that a human being can take. In these years, I've also been challenged in other areas of our life in Christ, especially in questions about the nature of the church itself and how it functions as a concrete and visible community within the world. Up until this time, however, this study has had to be a more private conversation, shared only with those whom I explicitly rely on to keep me honest and to keep me stay on the straight and narrow, or to help me stay on the straight and narrow. Because I was not sure about the exact nature of the questions I was asking or about how they might be answered, I did not want to make this conversation a public one, lest in any way I scandalize or confuse anyone unnecessarily. But now that many of these questions have been answered for me and my conscience has been duly shaped, it's time for me to make this public, to share it with you, and to let what has become an internal matter of conviction play itself out in my public life as a Christian and as a priest. Somebody says, going to need more evidence than this. Well, I don't frankly care what you're going to need. I'm just simply sharing this content, and I'm not going to share information that is going to be used to harass this priest. So don't expect anything in addition to me reading this homily. Moving on. My questions have primarily concerned the issue of ecclesiology. In other words, I've wanted to understand the nature of how the church functions as the organ of salvation, about how it understands itself as a community and exercises authority over its members, and about how it answers questions and deals with internal and external crises. I began to look into this issue seriously after the Eastern Orthodox churches attempted to hold a worldwide council on the island of Crete in 2016. This council had been in the works for around a century, and most people believe that it was essential that one held because the serious challenges that one be held because of the serious challenges facing the global Orthodox community. In the lead up to the Cretan Council, there was so much excitement and lots of trepidation and tons of conflict. When the council finally gathered in the spring of 2016, many of the Orthodox bishops representing at least half of the Orthodox Christians in the world refused to participate. The agenda of the council had been reduced to little or nothing of significance because the preparatory meetings had revealed that there was no consensus on any of the major theological issues. And as always, ecclesiastical geopolitics had dominated in the narrative, precluding any real hope of success. The bishops who met and participated in the council declared it to be an ecumenical and binding nature, declarations that were then promptly denied and rejected by those bishops and churches who did not attend and who quickly declared it to be a council to be forgotten and ignored. The failure of the Council of Crete was a personal blow for me because even in my short time as an Orthodox pastor, I saw the need for the church to immediately and clearly speak into the many issues we were facing on the ground. I was deeply troubled about the bishop's inability to even gather together to discuss such issues, much less to provide us with any real answers. To be clear, I was not then and still am not bothered by unanswered questions or conflict within the church per se. These things, after all, have been present in the church since the time of the apostles. But I was deeply disturbed that no one, least of all the bishops, seemed to know how the church could actually answer any of these crucial questions or resolve any of the conflicts that seem to be multiplying at a rapid rate within the global community. Since that time, the ecclesiastical landscape within the Eastern Orthodox Church has only darkened and become more fraught with doctrinal and canonical landmines. In 2018-2019, the establishment of a new church in Ukraine by the Ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople provoked a schism, which has since split global Orthodoxy in half, and which threatens to touch even the daily lives of us here at, and again, I redacted the name of the place. The question of whether or not Constantinople had the canonical right to do this is hotly debated on all sides, with insults and accusations abounding. And the ensuing chaos threatens to rip whole autocephalous churches right down the middle. What is most telling in the midst of this crisis in Orthodoxy is that all parties are utterly convinced of the rightness of their position, and they quote canon law and the sayings of the holy elders until they're blue in the face, but they remain as divided as ever. In the midst of this gathering storm, I began seriously to ask myself how I could possibly know which side to choose, and about how I could be assured in my conscience that I was truly following the dictates of Orthodox doctrine and canon law. If the bishops of the world are divided, I asked myself time and again, how can I know if I'm in the right camp? How can I know if I remain in the true church of Christ? Who gets to bind my conscience and tell me whether or not I'm on the right path? And finally, and most pressingly, how do I, as a priest, speak into these issues with no obvious ecclesiastical voice to guide me? As I posed these actual questions to a variety of bishops, priests, theologians, and friends, I received every conceivable answer, a smattering of which included always obey your local bishop, follow the monks of Mount Athos, put your head down and ignore everything, wait for the next ecumenical council, a rather absurd statement in light of Crete, culminating in the advice of Metropolitan Callistus, where, well, Father so and so, again redacted, you'll simply have to figure out who you think is right. The Eastern Orthodox tradition claims to be built upon patristic witness, and we're told that as Orthodox Christians, when in doubt, we're to turn to the teachings of the fathers of the church, and this is precisely what I did. I began to read the history and declarations of the great ecumenical councils. This in turn led me to study individual fathers and teachers of the church to hear what they said in the midst of the terrible doctrinal crisis and conflicts of their own day. I read from the writings of saints like Ignatius of Antioch, Irenaeus of Lyon, Athanasius the Great, John Chrysostom. I studied the letters and encyclicals of saints Leo of Rome and Gregory the Great, and went on from there to the teachings of Saint Maximus the Confessor and Theodore the Studite, and dozens more like them. In fact, I read countless patristic documents from the apostolic times all the way through the schism with Rome, all of which deal with the question of ecclesiology and authority. I looked specifically into the issue because I wanted to know how the church of the past, especially the church of the first millennium, with all her incredible teachers and martyrs, dealt with schism and doctrinal confusion within the church community itself. What I discovered in all this study profoundly challenged the strong anti-Roman bias that had been inculcated in me and shook me to the core. There is no other way to say it. In the countless struggles, conflicts, and doctrinal disputes of the first millennium, the era in which all the major doctrinal questions regarding Christ, the Holy Trinity, and much more were both debated and settled, the Orthodox fathers of the East and West gave one consistent answer when challenged by heresy and schism: flee to the Roman Church, take shelter under her guidance and protection. Time and again, when issues of theology were in dispute or bishops fought over questions of jurisdiction and control, those whom history and the church have hailed as Orthodox are the ones with Rome, whom Rome accepted and supported as being in the right. In fact, the very idea of correct dogma became associated directly with whatever was held to be true by the Bishop of Rome. In my research, I discovered entire books dedicated simply quoting saints of the church from the East and West who say the same thing over and over again. The essence of their teaching is that among the apostles, St. Peter was given a unique ministry. Christ would establish Peter as the rock and foundation, not only of the apostles and their ministry, but of the whole church. He, and after him, his successors at Rome, would be the ultimate standard and point of reference when disputes about faith arose. Every one of those saints I mentioned above can be found saying that. If you want to know if you belong to the Catholic Church, which we confess in the Creed, or if you desire to know what is the Orthodox faith, then go to the Church of Rome and adhere to her communion and her teaching. The fathers link this belief with the fact that Christ explicitly told Peter that he would receive the keys of the kingdom and that the gates of hell would not prevail against it. It is therefore precisely because of this promise of Christ to Peter that we know that the bishops of Rome will never judge wrongly when serious disputes about the church and Orthodox teaching arise. For the fathers of the undivided church, it is therefore a matter of conscience that one adhere entirely to the apostolic faith, as it is proclaimed by the Bishop of Rome, the visible and universal pastor of the Catholic Church. I do not have time or space in this letter to make a comprehensive list of the patristic quotes or documents, nor is my purpose today to make any kind of real theological argument. That has been successfully done by countless authors and teachers before me, and you can look into those on another time and place. Instead, I hope to simply begin to share with you my own journey and to start a conversation with you about what I've included in an essential issue within our lives as Orthodox Christians. I became an Orthodox Christian because I believed that in this communion, I could truly be led through the challenges of the Christian life, and that from this church, I would be taught the fullness of the apostolic faith. For me, following this tradition has always been a matter of truth and about having a conscience formed by Christ and his church. To this day, I believe that was 99% the case in the Eastern Orthodox churches. But to my very great surprise, the apostolic witness seems to say that there is one other essential element, another essential ministry given to us by God in order to protect the unity of the church and to preserve her teaching pure and undefiled. And this is precisely the Petrine ministry exercised to this day by the Bishop of Rome. It is likely that many of you are now asking within yourselves how any of this can possibly be true. You may already feel deeply betrayed that you are only now hearing this from me. Maybe you feel like you've heard it all before and want nothing to do with it. And some of you probably just want to know, what now? Indeed, there are now 1,000 unanswered questions, and in the face of them, I can only beg your patience and understanding, as well as to make a solemn pledge that if you want to ask me any of those questions moving forward, I will try to be both as open and thorough as I can be in my answers. I will also try my best to immediately deal with some of the most basic and probably the most painful questions emerging today. He goes on. The simple fact is that the conclusions I have reached concerning the unique role of the Roman Church put me outside the accepted mainstream of Eastern Orthodoxy. Our beloved bishop, so and so, cannot realistically allow me to publicly adhere to or teach these things at the name of the location. It is the most painful reality of this entire situation that my opening of this conversation with you all today is essentially to tender my resignation within the blank diocese of blank. Bishop blank, when apprised of what I have done today, really has little choice but to remove me from my position, though I would not doubt his love for me up to now, nor even moving forward. I hope you can now appreciate my caution in sharing this conversation with you until I was utterly convinced of the truth of these claims myself. I also hope you can believe that it has been with a deep sense of pastoral responsibility that I have attempted to love, teach, and guide you in all in these last 6 years. And it is with that same sense of responsibility that I dare now to declare to you today my own convictions about what the Orthodox churches need in order to survive the storms of this life. I believe that the Eastern Orthodox churches are in a state of schism with that one God-given source of unity, the Apostolic See of Rome. And I believe every single one of us needs to flee that schism and embrace union with the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, and that we confess every day, in this creed. Let me get rid of some trolls here in the chat. All right, moving forward. This is why I cannot remain silent any longer. This is why, though I must resign from my position within the blank Orthodox Church and as the pastor of blank, nevertheless, in no way do I renounce my pastoral love or commitment to a single one of you in this parish. I sincerely invite each of you into a dialogue, no matter how hard it may be or how long it may take, to address the question of Roman primacy. I have no shame or fear in this, not because I'm somehow special or because it's some great idea I've come to, but because in doing this, I know that I follow the example of the explicit teaching of the fathers of the church whom we venerate. The one thing I no longer dare to do is oppose these great teachers and martyrs, witnesses to the truth, and remain in schism with Roman Church and the successors of St. Peter. Blank, the name of his wife, the kids and I will be formally received into full union with the Church of Rome through the episcopal blessing and jurisdiction of Bishop Blank of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Diocese of Blank. The Greek Catholic Church of Ukraine is one of several Eastern Orthodox churches worshiping in our very same Byzantine rite in full communion with the Bishop of Rome. This church, like all the Eastern Catholic churches, of which there are 23 in all, retains all of its Eastern Orthodox character while living in full and perfect communion with the rest of the Catholic Church spread throughout the world. I am being received as a priest in good standing, with the blessing to continue my pastoral ministry. Bishop Blank receives us from no personal ambition of his own, nor to poach a priest or parish from another jurisdiction, but because he also sees the urgent need for us to enter into full union with the Catholic Church. He extends his welcome not only to me and my family, but to every single one of you who, examining the truth of these claims I've made today, should wish to follow us in this act of obedience to the apostolic tradition. I can truly say that as a priest, I've had no other ambition but to be a good pastor for the parish of blank. Though it has not always been an easy life, it has been a wonderful life for our family, living and working alongside you as we've all sought to be transformed together in the image and likeness of our Lord Jesus Christ. Today, I'm resigning not because of any bitterness towards the parish, Bishop Blank, the Blank Church, or even the Eastern Orthodox community as a whole. Nor do I have any illusions that, in terms of the daily struggle of faith, the grass is any greener on the Roman side of the fence. If I could remain the priest of blank and be in full union with the Catholic Church, there is no question. There is no question that I would stay on. But to be in submission to the Roman primacy has become for me an issue of conscience, and so I must act. I also must emphasize today that I do not seek to sever any relationship with any of you or with any of my Eastern Orthodox friends and family. The doors are flung wide. My heart remains entirely open to you all. And no matter what you decide in response to the invitation I've given you today, you will always remain a part of my spiritual family for whom I will continue to intercede as long as I have the breath to do it. May our risen Lord, through the prayers of his most holy and immaculate mother, the ever Virgin Mary, and all the saints, grant you every consolation and help in the days to come. God has already given us so much in these last few years, and no matter what any of us face in our lives, we can truly know and proclaim in the deepest sense of hope that Christ is in our midst. He is and ever shall be. Finally, to encourage and inspire you, I leave you with this quote of our great father among the saints, Maximus the Confessor. Quote, the extremities of the earth and everyone in every part of it who purely and rightly confess the Lord look directly towards the most holy Roman Church in her confession and faith as to a sun of unfailing light, awaiting from her the brilliant radiance of the sacred dogmas of our fathers, according to that which the inspired and holy councils have stainlessly and piously decreed. For from the descent of the incarnate word among us, all the churches in every part of the world have held the greatest church alone to be their base and foundation, seeing that according to the promise of Christ our Savior, the gates of hell will never prevail against her, that she has the keys of the Orthodox confession and right faith in him, that she opens the true and exclusive religion to such men as approach with piety, and she shuts up and locks every heretical mouth which speaks against the Most High. End quote. That was the homily. And, I spoke to him. He said, unfortunately, some people were very, very angry. Some people walked out. Um, others stayed and talked a little bit to him. But for the most part, it wasn't received too well, as you could imagine. A few began to look into the issues, a few in that congregation, and they themselves ended up making their journey to full Catholic communion. So some looked into his claims, but the majority didn't really listen to it. And I encourage you all to, number one, pray for that priest, pray for his family. There will still be some who will try to find out who he is and harass his wife and his kids and all that. Pray for him, pray for his ministry. He is a priest in, as you can see, the Ukrainian Catholic Church, and he is doing some really good work in the church right now. So pray for his ministry, pray for his family, and also pray for the seed that was planted there, because he was telling them about the necessity of entering into full Catholic communion and the need to be fully united to Christ's church. And again, that's a message that a lot of people don't want to hear today. And so I really, really encourage you pray that that seed grows and they will think about these words and they themselves would enter into Catholic communion. And that, as other people encounter this homily, that their hearts would also be convicted of the necessity of preserving Catholic communion, regardless of the cost, because that was definitely a costly decision for him, as you could imagine. So, once again, pray for him and pray for that message to bear fruit. All right, that's going to do it. We'll see you later.